headquarters. Now you can see the building itself is broken up into two sections there. Left-hand side's from about 1921, with the expansion to the right in 1924, and the whole building designed by architecture firm Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. Now the first scoop that we're getting here, this is known as Spanish Revival architecture. Basically, as the name implies, we are taking that architecture from Spain and reviving it here in our city. So in this case, this clock tower is actually modeled after the Giralda Bell Tower of the Cathedral de Sevilla. You can also notice surrounding the building's entire exterior are about 250,000 terracotta clay tiles in 6 different shades of white, or that nice cream color. The color actually harkens back to the World's Fair of 1893, which is a major event we hosted here in Chicago that we'll talk about a little bit later on. Now also, because this is terracotta, it's a very fragile building material. If a terracotta building here in Chicago does ever get too dirty, as it does happen from time to time, it's inevitable, these buildings actually have to be washed by hand. From time to time, every few years, you'll see some people suspended up there. They're using soft bristle brushes and a soapy misting system scrubbing the building clean. That's in comparison to some of these more modern and new buildings where they can be pressure washed. So do keep that in mind. I don't think we're going to be seeing any of it happening today, but it does happen. Now, as you pass underneath,
entendeu?
do Salvo Bridge here.
Cada 3 anos eles têm que lavar a mão, porque o material é frágil. Não é que nesses prédios novos que eles podem lavar com vapo. Tem que ir na mão.
About 1,388 feet tall. So this is some fairly new architecture to our city from 2009, but this also leads us into a whole philosophy within architecture known as contextualism. So, contextualism is where a skyscraper or building will complement its surroundings using its own architecture. If you take a look here, there are 3 setback patio balconies. Each one of those balconies is designed to roughly match the height of surrounding buildings in this area. For example, first setback roughly matches the height of the setback of the Wrigley building just behind this. Second to the left matches the height of many skyscrapers across, and then the top right-hand side matches the height of AMA Plaza, which is a black box building just behind Trump Tower here. Excuse me, my allergies are going crazy. Now, this skyscraper was designed by an architect named Adrian Smith. I like to call Adrian Smith the world's tallest architect. He is not very tall, but he does design a lot of tall buildings, so that's how he gets his nickname. For example, he designed the Burj Khalifa, located in Dubai, has the record as the tallest skyscraper in the world, about 2,717 feet tall. For some perspective, that's roughly double the size of this skyscraper. So that holds the record. We used to hold the record back in the day with the Sears Tower, and we'll see that one a little bit later on in the south branch of the river coming up. He's also working to outdo his record, Adrian Smith. He also designed Jeddah Tower in Saudi Arabia. That one's still under construction. It's planned to be just about 3,200 feet. All right, now here's AMA Plaza. We're going to look beyond that at these 2 residential high-rises. You might recognize them from movies and album covers. Very unique and iconic design. This is known as Marina City. Now, Marina City here was being built out throughout the 1960s. 1962 and 1964 for the main 2 towers. The entire complex finished up construction right around 1967. So, 1960s Chicago, very different than 2020 Chicago. I say that because back in the 1960s, this was much more industrial. The downtown area was mainly taken up by steel mills and factories and distilleries. The river itself was industrial serving, but was also kind of stinky and gross. Did not make for the most pleasant living environment. So if you were an architect or a developer, you had to do a lot of heavy lifting to bring people to want to live here. So Bertrand Goldberg designed Marina City as a city within a city. So what that means is you have all these amenities inside, built right in, so the residents don't have to go very far to meet their basic needs. Things like grocery stores, shopping centers, restaurants. You can see a steakhouse right here. Underneath, you also have a marina for your boat. At the base of each one of the residential structures, you have valet parking for your car. There used to be an ice skating rink included here, which has since been torn down, unfortunately. But at the basement of this first tower, there is an operational bowling alley, which has been in operation for many years. And then connected to the side of this one here, see the roof back there, that is a music venue known as the Chicago House of Blues, and that used to be an old movie theater for the residents, since been renovated. So still lots of fun things going on with Marina City. They do have units available, and since it's a little bit more dated by modern standards, it does come at a fraction of the cost of some more residential architecture that we'll see later on. All right, looking to grab yourself a nice drink next to the water. Tiny Tap, great place to do so. As you can see, very busy on a beautiful day like today. We're going to look beyond Tiny Tap. Hi, Jim. How's it going? Just behind there you can see some neoclassical or modern classical architecture where you're basically combining these new and old elements together. White granite combined with reflective glass. This is designed by Ricardo Bofill. Now, you notice how this white granite rises to the very top. The roof of this building is designed to look like a Greek temple and the Parthenon. So a lot of people call this building the Parthenon on steroids. I think that works out pretty well, right? Definitely see the influence. All right, so that's a good hodgepodge of different architectural styles to get us started. But I also want to acknowledge Chicago's infrastructure. Adding a lot of personality to this downtown area are our bridges right here. Now, we have about 18 of these trunnion bascule bridges, otherwise known as drawbridges, along the river. The rest are mainly lift bridges, and we have about 37 bridges in total. Now, actually, above one of our bridges coming up, so not LaSalle Street, but just past that, North Wells, you're also going to see an example of our elevated train lines. Has anyone taken the L trains to get around town while you've been here? You should definitely do so. Actually, a great scenic view is on the Brown Line train heading out of downtown. You really get to see a lot of these incredible buildings from up there. It's a good way to experience it all. Now, our first L train actually dates back to 1892. It was known as the Alley L. It's been incorporated as part of the Green Line train, but that really served as the foundation to build everything out. Now, actually, the nature of our trains, all but one of them feed into downtown Chicago and have to pass through the loop. That's where the trains make a big loop around the downtown area, and that's how it gets its name. And the reason for that is because back then you would have working class people living north, south, and west of here, so that provides them with easy access to get to their factories downtown. So that's really how it came to be. And then we used to have streetcars, kind of piece the rest of it together, which kind of got overtaken by the rise of the automobiles around the 1920s or so. If we get lucky, we will see some of these trains passing through. I'll make sure to point them out for you. But even still today, our rail system specifically is ranked number 3 by annual ridership, just behind New York City and Washington, D.C. So great way to get around town. Best of all, it's a lot cheaper than an Uber. A day pass only $5, a single ride about $2.50. So that's how I get to and from work every day. Now here to the right-hand side, we can see some more architecture. This is a beautiful style. This is known as Art Deco. Art Deco, very popular style during the 1920s. Now, this here is the Merchandise Mart. It was actually completed in 1930, being used as a furniture warehouse and showrooms for Marshall Field and Company. You might know them nowadays as Macy's department store. Now, take a look here. Clean lines, very common to see here. The material that's being used is polished limestone. You can also see these vertical pinstripe columns really drawing your eyes up to the top, meant to elongate the building, give you a sense of scale and magnitude, along with these bronze accents all around. So the main focus of these Art Deco buildings was luxury and magnificence, and parallels the time of when they became popular, the 1920s, the Roaring 20s, which was a time of relative economic prosperity until the stock market crash in 1929. Train, there it is. Told you I'd point them out for you. It's either the brown or the purple line train feeding out of the loop. I'm going to keep pointing them out for you, don't worry. You might see some more coming up over here. So this here is the modern day trophy case of Chicago here. This is really the contemporary architectural showcase. My friends, this is Wolf Point. It's where the north, south, and main branch of the river all come together. We're going to explore each branch here today. We're going to start to the right-hand side. Now, we do get lots of questions immediately about that building, the upside-down pencil-shaped building. We're going to save the details because I'm going to talk about that on the south branch. But for now, take a look to the right. This is the newest building in this area, Salesforce Tower from 2023. To either side of that, we have Wolf Point East and West, a good example of some new luxury condominiums and apartments next to the water from the late 2010s. To the left of all of that, directly in front of us on the river, we can see River Point Tower from 2017, and I like to call that one the Hot Pocket Building, because it looks like a giant Hot Pocket, don't you think? Now on the back train, another one, pink line train. Anyways, on the back side, you can also see this red spiral. That red spiral is known as the Constellation, designed by an architect named Santiago Calatrava. So Santiago Calatrava is another Spanish architect who was supposed to have a building in Chicago, but does not. Here's what happened. His building was going to be known as the Chicago Spire. It was going to be next to Lakeshore Drive on the main branch. It was going to be a residential structure about 2,000 feet tall. It was going to hold the record as the tallest skyscraper in North America. And then that was all canceled because of the recession. So all canceled about 2008. So we never got any of his buildings here in our city. but we do have that. Not the building, just the red spiral, that's his. So I wish we had more to demonstrate for you, but we're happy we have some of his work regardless. All right, we're gonna make this right-hand turn, folks. Coming up, right-hand side, you can see the bridge pulled up. That's the Carroll Avenue Railroad Bridge. Dates back to 1908. On the other side of that, you can also see the Fulton House, the pink building. That's actually the oldest building we'll be seeing on the tour today. That dates back to 1898. So, very old. Originally, it did not look like this. It was just a giant freezer box for the meat packing industry. Keep in mind, back in the mid-1800s, that was a massive industry for Chicago, meat packing, right? That went from processing the meat, canning factories around town, lard factories, right? Then you have all this processed raw meat, you gotta store it somewhere. That's where a freezer box like this came in. So this was being put to use for a long time. Finally, it went through a renovation in the 1980s by an architect named Harry Weiss to turn these into residential properties. That's what you're seeing here today. What I do find fascinating about that renovation process, while they were doing it, they found out that the 4 feet thick walls of the building were stuffed full of matted horsehair and cork. I mean, think about it, that was early day insulation for this property. Craziest of all though, it was frozen solid from spending so many years as a freezer box. So they had to wait 6 months to just thaw out the building before removing all of that stuff inside, replacing it, continuing on with that renovation process. So being put to good use today, happy they were able to repurpose it despite all the crazy situations there. Now, Harry Weiss designed this right here. These are some townhomes. These are the river cottages. Take note of the triangle-shaped roof. Kind of is very reminiscent of sailboats along Lake Michigan. That's where he gets the inspiration for these designs. He was a sailor himself, so you can see those nautical themes incorporated. This is a prime-time example of postmodernism, a response to the more simplified and functional style, things like black box modernism, international style, which we'll talk about later on. These are from about 1989 or so. Now, right-hand side, we can see the East Bank Club. This is a high-end fitness center from about 1980, but this really gives us some insight to the attitude towards the river at the time. This is the back side of the building. It's facing completely away from the water by design, because back then the whole idea was the water, stinky, gross. If you're making a building, face it away. That has changed in recent years. Early 2000s, we see these pop up. These are the Kinsey Park townhomes. Beautiful, more modern townhomes, and you can definitely see the attitude shifting, because now you have all these patios and balconies. You have a rooftop terrace area, beautiful landscaping, an expensive HOA fee, and all these patios and sidewalks, and all of it facing and embracing what the river has to offer in the modern day. So it gives us a good visual representation of how much things have changed, because basically Chicago decided we're going to embrace our waterways. When we did, the architecture now reflects that. We embrace it with the architecture. All right, so right there, we're going to take a very quick break. It's not going to be for too long. I don't get lots of chances to walk up and down the boat, answer questions, so I'm going to do that now if you have anything that you want to ask me. We're going to continue on in just a little bit here. As you can see, Captain Kimball's turning the boat around. We're going to start heading down the South Branch shortly, so lots more to see. Stay tuned. Drinks and restrooms downstairs. We'll be right back.
O cheirinho é muito bom dessa parte do rio aqui.
Alright, awesome. Got some Illuminatis, I see.
O cheirinho do rio dessa parte não é muito bom, não. Entendeu tudo? Precisa de tradução simultânea.
Parte, antigo, era, modelo. De tudo, nada. Fiz confusão até pra entender os numbers. Years. Sol do pão, esse ganho de leite, vou ficar com 2 marcas de zóio aqui no óculos.
Eu tô morrendo de sede.
Eu tô ficando de sede tanto você falar de água.
Oi?
Eu tô ficando com sede tanto você falar da água.
Antigamente aqui o centro, esse loop, era só fábrica, indústria, né? E o povo vinha, por isso que eles fizeram as linhas e fizeram L para facilitar os trabalhadores a chegar. E essa aqui era uma região que era nojento, poluído e tal. E aí quando começaram a construção lá dos milinhos, falou que era um desafio fazer com que a galera viesse aqui para morar, porque era uma região que não tinha interesse para morar. Então isso foi na década de 60, comparado com hoje, que aqui é puta.
All right, we had a great question about these bridges just behind me here. So let's talk about them. So coming up in front of us, this is the Kinsey Street Bridge. Is anyone familiar with the Dave Matthews Band incident from the early 2000s? Yeah, this is that bridge. If you do not know what I'm talking about, I cannot talk about it on the microphone because it's really gross. But if you're curious, just look up Dave Matthews Band Chicago. It'll pop up for you. So yeah, cover your heads. Now, this is a Trunnion Bascule Bridge, as well as this one back here. So this bridge is actually pulled up like there because it's declared a Chicago landmark. So it's not going to be touched. It stays like that pretty much year-round, but it is still fully functional, and they still do perform maintenance on the bridge itself. So we can actually explain what these are. These are Trunnion Bascule bridges. Bascule is a French term. It means teeter-totter or seesaw. That's how they work. So front weight of the bridge. On the back, you need a counterweight, which is where the large lump of concrete comes in. That's a counterweight. It helps to lift it up and down with the help of a small motor controlled inside a bridge tender house right over there, where you basically press a button and a bridge can open up or down in only about a minute's time. It does not take too long. Now, the key difference between this and the rest that we'll see, nowadays the bridge tender houses are actually built into the back side, so you no longer see the counterweight exposed like this one, but that's how they all work. And you do see the bridges open and close every once in a while, but specifically during the very beginning of the summer and very end of the summer, sailboats, because they have the big, tall sails and everything, they can't actually make their way without opening the bridges. So on Wednesdays and Saturdays during the early summer, end of summer, 9:30 a.m. they start. If you miss your bridge lift, you got to wait until the next one. All right, let's focus back once again, very briefly, on our hot pocket friend over here, River Point Tower, at the archway at the bottom there. The reason it's there is because underneath that area you have Amtrak and Metro line trains running. So that's where these portholes are. Those are exhaust fans for those train lines. So that actually limits the construction for certain sections of this building. That's why it's kind of set back there. You have that archway. The same thing applies to the upside down pencil-shaped building. So this is 150 North Riverside. It's insane construction, I must admit, because right-hand side, there is no base, just glass covering the exterior, train lines pass underneath. What about the left-hand side facing the water? Well, in 2009, an ordinance was passed by the city. So now it requires the base of your structure be set back at least 30 feet from the river, as it has to be reserved for public walking space and public river access. So that basically means the mass of the entire structure is concentrated to the middle at the core. The core is only about 39 feet across, and it's dug down roughly 100 feet until you reach that bedrock. It then has to be secured into the bedrock using concrete caissons, which is all connected to a steel truss that starts at the bottom and the steel rises all the way to the top on both sides. So yeah, this is insane, right? I think we can all agree on that. This is another good example of a skyscraper that actually suffers from wind sway. So you want your skyscraper to be able to bend and sway in the wind very slightly, because otherwise, if it's too stiff, you're going to risk breaking the foundation of your building. That's not good for obvious reasons. At the same time, you have real-life people who are living and working inside of these buildings, and if it sways too much, people at the top will get motion sick. That's no good either. So you have to find this balance. Now, one way of dealing with wind sway, up at the top of this building, inside it, there are 12 concrete containers that are filled with 160,000 gallons of water. Those are known as inertial slosh dampers, sometimes referred to as tuned mass dampers. As the wind hits the side of the building, the water inside the dampers will then slosh in the opposite direction. So that gives the building that counterbalance so it can find and maintain its center of gravity. Now that applies to a lot of these buildings in downtown Chicago. How much water and how many tanks, that's all up to the structural engineers, who have to work very closely with those lead architects to make sure these buildings can function properly and sway back and forth accordingly. Now that is an incredible design by architecture firm Getch Partners from about 2017. They finished things up. Now if we take a look coming up here to the left-hand side, we can see some more work from them. So this right here is known as the Bank of America building. It finished up construction right around 2021. Now you can definitely see how once again they were limited and restricted by that 30 feet setback. So here you can see these steel tripod beams. We've got 3 of them across, and they're vaulting up the 3rd floor, providing that public walking space underneath. Now I gotta say, I really do love both of their skyscrapers along the river because I think both are great examples of how no matter what you do as an architect, you're always going to run into these roadblocks, right? These things kind of block your path forward, and you have to work around them. You have to come up with these creative solutions, right? Something doesn't go your way, you got to innovate. I think both of these buildings are a great example of how limitation kind of paves the way to innovation. Also adds some very unique designs to our waterways and gives me something as a tour guide to talk about, so that works out well too. Looks like we might have some slowdown coming up here. It looks like the water taxi in front of us is turning, so 1 second. All right, passing underneath Washington Boulevard, we're going to see some more Art Deco buildings. Beautiful, lavish style, if you remember. We'll start out here to the left-hand side. So this is the Civic Opera Building. It was completed about 1929. Designed by Graham Anderson, Probst & White. They did include some fun ornamentation, including at the base of the windows, you can see the theater masks across. I love that. Now here to the right-hand side, you can see 2 North Riverside Plaza, designed by Hullabird & Root, completed in the same year, 1929. But you might also know this building as the Chicago Daily News Building, because back about 1978, 6 floors worth of space were occupied by the Chicago Daily News. Top couple of floors were a printing press for them. But I want to focus on when these were built. So 1929 is a notable year. It's the same year that the stock market crashed, plunging us into the Great Depression. All right, that wasn't so good. Then following that into the 1940s, that was World War II. You had to get through about 2 decades worth of time, and during that time, not a lot of new buildings were popping up because we had some other things to think about. Now, it was not until finally the 50s and 60s came around, we did see that architecture spark up again. That is largely to thank because of an architect named Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. He had fled Nazi Germany, settled in Chicago around 1938, worked with the Chicago School to pioneer a new style. So that led us to this in the 50s and 60s. Folks, I present to you Black Box Modernism. Wow. So you might be saying to yourself, this is kind of a boring style. That's correct. You see, the whole idea was Ludwig Mies van der Rohe came around and said, I can give you a functional building at a fraction of the price of those expensive and fancy Art Deco buildings. If you are a developer post-World War II, that's a very appealing offer. And so, this style became started to kind of take over this downtown area. Now, I also like to view Black Box Modernism as the iPhone of architecture, because you see this switch, right? And you can actually see that it paved the way for a lot of new buildings to start up construction, got the ball rolling, and kind of changed the game. But it's also like looking back at an old iPhone 3G, right? By modern standards, comparing it to all that fancy architecture of Wolf Point, it's going to look a little bit dated, a little simplistic, and that's all right, because we can see what it led to, what it inspired. But let's fast forward in time, all right? So from the 50s and 60s, Black Box Modernism, we're going to now move along to the 1970s. Say goodbye to a boring black box building and say hello to a boring white box building. All right, innovation. Yeah, it's kind of like comparing the iPhone 3G to the iPhone 3GS. Wow. Not too much has changed, and to be fair, there wasn't really a massive need for things to change because Black Box Modernism was working out so well. So in this case, it is a completely different style, but it's very similar. International style buildings is what you're seeing here. You basically just change the key material and color, but keep the same functional boxy design. You can see a lot of international style buildings around us in this section of the river, as they did become quite popular for the same reason: cheapness, efficiency, functionality. But okay, we're going to fast forward once again to the 1980s. That's finally when we see these architects finally settle in, try out these new, more intricate and unique designs. So that leads to things like Gateway Center 4 to the back right-hand corner. You can see that glass building. So the glass was specifically chosen because of its color and reflective quality. Mimics that whole area of the Chicago River down below it. You can also see how the curve of the building matches the upcoming curve of the South Branch. Ignore my hair, but if I don't do this, I'm going to lose my hat. Now, in between it all, you can also see the Mid-America Commodity Exchange right over here. I give this building a shout out because we don't get a very good view of the John Hancock on our tour. It is the same X-shaped braces that are being used, same architecture firm as well, Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. So I'd like to give that one a shout out. Now back to the left-hand side, right over here, you can see 300 South Wacker. So 300 South Wacker was also being completed towards the end of the 1960s. This concrete slab on the back side of it has always been there. It serves as support for the elevator shaft, which runs through the middle. Now, that was left blank originally. Nothing was on the back side, because once again, who really cares? You're facing away from the water. But then, in the early 2010s, new owners moved in here, and they wanted to put themselves on the map, you know, do something with the concrete slab. So they quite literally put a giant map of the Chicago River on the side of their building, right there. Wolf Point's up there. The red dot in the middle is a "You Are Here" dot. It's shaped like the building, exactly where it is along the river, and it helps us out because now if you get lost, you can just be like, "Where are we? Oh, we're passing by that building right now, heading south." All right, now if you want to know a fun filming location, here to the right-hand side, we have another Art Deco building. This is known as the old post office, but if you have ever seen the Dark Knight movie by Christopher Nolan,
ele pula desse
series,
prédio
yes,
para aquele.
this was the bank, the Gotham City Bank, right? From that opening bank heist scene with Joker and his cronies, and then Joker's bursting out the side of the building on a big yellow school bus. You get it. For my super fans, you might even be able to recognize the chandeliers inside here, still the originals, right inside the first set of windows right there. Now, this is not a bank. This is known as the old post office because, well, it was completed originally in 1921. Went through a massive expansion, so by 1932, this building held the record as the largest post office in the world. Now, why in the world did we need such a large post office? Well, we had to keep up with demand for the mail-in order catalog industry, being pioneered by major retail giants, right? Montgomery Ward, Sears Roebuck and Company. Lots of demand to keep up with, lots of packages, right? So large post office to do so. This post office was in full operation, finally closed down in 1996. The post office downsized, moved a couple blocks down from here, and this was left vacant and abandoned. Nothing was done with it for years. Finally, new investors came in, put in about $900 million to do a full gut rehab of the entire post office, and the goal was to turn it into new and modern office space. So they were ready to go, opened up their doors in 2019. Oh no, the whole world shut down after that, right? Had to get through all that stuff, so it worked out. They're open once again, and now it does serve as office space for Uber Freight. Oh, thank you so much. On the job. After. Buy me a drink after. You don't have to clap. Oh, stop. All right. So our midway check-in. Everyone doing all right so far? Having fun? Beautiful weather that we're having, right? I can't believe it. It's like 80 degrees right now, and then tomorrow it's dropping back down to 60. I'm like, come on, please. Where's the summer? We're almost there. Now here to the right-hand side, we have another building. Looks very similar to Marina City, which we saw towards the middle of town. This is known as River City. It might surprise you to learn, this was actually supposed to outdo the original. This was supposed to be about triple the size, with plenty more like it, branching this whole section of the South Loop. And it was going to be connected by these interconnected sky bridges. That would have been so cool. Obviously, that is not what we have. So, Bertrand Goldberg, same architect, did not get enough funding for this project. He had to scale things back. He tried to keep really a very similar design philosophy with the city within a city environment. So you do still have commercial space down below, as well as apartments and condominiums up above. You also have a marina underneath, but then also next to it here to our left. One thing I like to point out with this marina specifically is that there are actually people who will live in their boats here sometimes year-round. We get a lot of questions. People are like, doesn't it get cold during the winter? Yes, it does. And they still choose to live here because they can save a lot of money on rent. So a lot of these that you see are privately owned, renting out the docking space a lot cheaper than an apartment or condo nearby. But, I mean, hey, I don't live on a boat. I just work on one. I don't live here. I don't live there. But if you don't live here, you could live there. So this is the Reed. The Reed is pretty new to the South Loop. It just finished up construction within the last 2 years or so. It is now fully operational. As you can see, this is definitely catering towards upscale business clientele who work in the Loop area. Each and every unit comes with a full set of amenities, private balcony space. Lower balcony area has things like bonfires and grills, full workout center inside. You get the idea. So starting price for a studio apartment per month is going to be right around $2,200. Jumps up from there quite quickly. If you would like to buy yourself a brand new luxury condo, they do have some for sale. And all you got to do is scan the QR code that they put right here. Yeah, first time I saw that pop up, I was like, well, guess I might as well give them a shout out. They want people to scan it, so there you go. Check out all the listings. As we continue, we're going to focus back on this Art Deco style. This is a fun building. Here to the right-hand side, you can see the limestone facade, clean lines, vertical pinstripe columns. At the top of this, you can also see a statue. The statue is facing away from us, but in the statue's right hand is a bag of corn, and in the statue's left hand is a sheaf of wheat. That is a statue of the Roman goddess Ceres, the goddess of agriculture. So this is known as the Chicago Board of Trade building. It's where Chicago originally traded agricultural futures and options on the stock market when it first opened up in 1930. Believe it or not, this building was the tallest skyscraper in Chicago for about 35 years until it was beat out by the Richard Daley building. And it only stands at 605 feet tall. By modern standards, that's not a very tall skyscraper, but keep in mind, back then, this was pretty darn tall for America. And actually, it was so tall, in fact, that the sculptor of the statue, his name was John H. Storrs, he was like, well, I've already done the details of the, bag of corn, the sheaf of wheat. I probably don't need to go too extravagant, probably keep things pretty simple. Because of those reasons, he was like, I'm going to leave the face completely blank. No one's going to be able to see the top because the skyscraper is so tall. So it's still blank till this day. If you don't believe me, now all you got to do is go to the other side of that building, turn around, and zoom up with your camera phone. You can still see for yourself. No face on the statue. You just didn't think it was necessary. Now, I'll give a quick shout out here to 311 South Wacker, the pale granite building with the blue windows. The crown on top does light up in different colors in the evening, pretty fun to see. It's a fairly standard office building, but we're going to look just behind that at the black building with two white antennae on top. So that, my friends, is the one, the only, the iconic, the incredible, the Sears Tower. If you look it up on Google Maps, it's not going to say that. It's going to say Willis Tower. Here's what happened. 2009, Willis Insurance Group moves in. As part of the leasing agreement, they were able to pay an extra fee and secure the naming rights. So on all major platforms, it changed to Willis Tower, and then everyone in Chicago freaked out. I'm just going to call it the Sears Tower. That's how it's been known throughout most of time. That's the original name. Call it what you would like. But the Sears Tower stands at 1,451 feet tall. That makes it the tallest skyscraper in Chicago till this day. It also held the record as the tallest skyscraper in the world from about the end of 1973 until 1998. So pushing 25 years as the world's tallest building. Now take a look. Do you see those antennae on top? Might surprise you to learn, those do not count towards the building's total measurements. Now, that is because of some technicalities in how buildings are measured and who is responsible for measuring buildings. So the organization responsible for measuring the height of tall buildings is called Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitats. It's not a very creative name, but they do say, nope, antenna don't count. The reason is because technically speaking, those are an added utility. Now, if you compare that to some other buildings, the statue that we saw on top of the Chicago Board of Trade, that does count. A spire like we have on Trump Tower, that does count. Same applies to the Burj Khalifa, the Empire State Building. Those have spires, not antenna. The key difference is those spires are part of the original overall and intentional design, while technically speaking, these antennae here were not added to the building until the early 1980s, not part of that original design. For that reason, you miss out on about 290 feet of extra height. Yeah, it's about the same height as one of those black box buildings we talked about earlier. But due to that technicality, does not count. Same applies to the John Hancock. Now, next thing to notice is we're looking in between here. This gives us a pretty good angle of how the building is designed and how it functions in the wind. Now, you're going to notice here you have these lines going down the side of the building. You also have moments where it kind of stops at different points throughout, right? Kind of those setbacks. So the building itself is actually broken up into individual towers, 9 in total, that are side by side. The smallest ones are towards the bottom, tallest in the middle, meaning that the central core towards the base has a lot of support, and that allows the building to function and sway in the wind. So we call it bundled tubes. The person who came up with the concept of bundled tubes, his name is Dr. Fazler Khan. He is the structural engineer for the Sears Tower, and he was working very closely with lead architect Bruce Graham. So the story goes of how they came up with this. They were in the early stages of development, and they were out grabbing a drink, writing their ideas down on a bar napkin. Dr. Fazler Khan takes out his pack of cigarettes and starts to play with them and demonstrates the concept of bundled tubes to Bruce Graham by bundling them together in his fist like this, getting those approximations for the smaller ones at the bottom, taller ones towards the top, and that leads to the design of the Sears Tower. So there you go. If you got a smoking habit and you're trying to quit, don't even worry about it. Just become a structural engineer and play with some cigarettes. It might lead to something cool. Now, with all that being said, the Sears Tower still can and does sway quite a bit in the wind. So about 50 mile per hour winds, that's not too bad. It's about 6 inches worth of wind sway. Bump that up to 200 mile per hour winds, then you're talking about 18 inches worth of wind sway. At most, according to SOM, their skyscraper can safely sway up to 3 feet. That's very scary and virtually impossible. It would take some pretty intense winds. For it to sway that much, you have nothing to worry about. Usually, you can safely go up towards the top. Now, up on floor 103, out of the 110 floors in total, that is where the sky deck is located. Has anyone been to the sky deck while you've been here? An incredible view, full 360 view of the city. It's quite amazing. To get up there, they do provide elevators for you, so that's great news. You don't have to walk too much. Hey, how's the field trip? Now, if you do not want to use the elevators to get to the top where the sky deck is located, you can just do it the old-fashioned way and climb the Sears Tower. I do not recommend that. That being said, 2 people have done that throughout our history. In 1981, there was an American man by the name Dan Goodwin who climbed the Sears Tower wearing a full Spider-Man costume with suction cups strapped to his wrists and ankles. We call him Spider Dan. I think it fits well. The other was a Frenchman in 1999 by the name Alain Robert, and he climbed the Sears Tower without any safety equipment on. Bare hands and feet, free solo the Sears Tower. There are videos of it on YouTube, and it's pretty crazy. Now, I will say, they both made it to the top successfully. That's great news. When they got up there, the fire department had tracked them up and was like, hi, and then they got arrested. So keep that in mind if you are thinking of climbing our building. It's probably dumb. Now, along with the sky deck, you also have 360 Chicago at the John Hancock. That's an equally incredible view. Along with that, we have plenty of fun things to do around town. The Shedd Aquarium, the Field Museum, the Art Institute of Chicago is one of the most incredible art museums in the world. And also, we have plenty of live arts, live theater as well. Here to the right, this is the Civic Opera Building. So this area where you see no windows, that is where the theater itself is located. Right inside there is the Civic Opera House. It is the second largest opera house in the United States. Seats right around 3,600 people inside in total. And this is the home of the Lyric Opera of Chicago, as well as the Joffrey Ballet. We also have Broadway in Chicago, where all the touring shows pass through. That operates out of the Nederlander, the Palace, the Playhouse, the CIBC, and the Auditorium. Right now, currently playing over at the CIBC Theater is one of my favorite musicals, Hadestown. I don't know if you can tell by the everything about me, but yeah, I like theater. Hey. Now here to the left, you can see the Boeing building. So the Boeing building here is kind of a mismatch going on. See up at the top there, you have that steel truss. So that's responsible for keeping certain aspects held in place from above. You run into problems down below in certain sections because you have a train switch that happens, so that prohibits construction. Then other areas are secured into bedrock. So this flip-flop going on. Now, this is known as the Boeing Building. Back in 2001, this became Boeing's international headquarters. They stuck around here in Chicago for about 20 years or so, are in the process of relocating those headquarters to Arlington, Virginia. If you go back to 1990, when this building first opened, this was the headquarters for the Morton Salt Company. That was the original intention for it to be built. And actually, because of that, up at the top, you can see 6 holes across the roof, which are specifically designed to resemble holes of a salt shaker. That's pretty fun. Now, what I do find fascinating is that now Morton Salt still operates in Chicago, but now their office space is located inside River Point Tower, which is shaped like a giant Hot Pocket, right? So now the building is quite literally stuffed with sodium, much like a Hot Pocket. Yeah, it works out. Now, hey, in the spirit of sodium, on our way back to Wolf Point, it's a good time to kind of plug our very salty and delicious Chicago-style food. If you want some deep dish pizza, Lou Malnati's, they have one connected to the Wrigley Building. Pretty good option. Pizzeria Uno's downtown location is the birth of Chicago deep dish from the 1940s. My personal favorite for deep dish pizza is going to be Pequod's up north. Now, if you do want not deep dish, because we have this reputation of like, oh, you're from Chicago, you eat deep dish all the time. Not really. If you want a traditional slice, Robert's Pizza and Dough Company on the Ogden Slip is fantastic. Now, if you do want a Chicago-style hot dog, Portillo's is the big one. Keep in mind, that's a mega chain restaurant at this point. So, if you want more of a Chicago local chain, there is also Devil Dogs or the Wiener Circle, a little bit further north. Train. And then also on top of that, you got Mr. Beef in the River North neighborhood for an Italian beef sandwich. I give that one a shout out because that is the filming location of the restaurant for the Hulu show The Bear. If you've ever seen The Bear before, you want to actually dine in the place where it's filmed, Mr. Beef in River North. Now back here to the right, this is another filming location. Now this is known as the Nuveen Building. It's from 1983, but you might recognize this one as Ferris Bueller's Dad's Office Building from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He worked at the top. Now, this is another great example of contextualism, right? Much like what we saw with Gateway Center 4, the curve of this building also matches the curve of the river. They were actually completed in the same year, 1983. Now, just next to it here, you can also see the Chicago Riverwalk being put to good use on a beautiful day like today, as you can see. Now, the Riverwalk was fully completed in 2016, but construction started back in 2003. This has always been a concept of something that Chicago wanted to have ever since the early 1900s. So now we're very lucky we do have it in place. Now, during the summertime, it gets very lively on the Riverwalk. You got bars and restaurants, sometimes live music and events, always lots of fun. Now, across from that Riverwalk, we can also see the Merchandise Mart. This is a pretty good angle of it because you can really see just how large it actually is. They're firecrackers, don't worry. Now, you can definitely see here, this is about 4.2 million square feet worth of total space. It is massive. The Merchandise Mart here actually held the record as the largest by square foot building in the world when it first opened in 1930. Held that record for about 13 years until it was beat out by the Pentagon. Now, still in touch with the retail roots of this building, on the back side you can see what kind of look like giant green Pez dispensers. Those are large bronze busts of the heads of what's known as the Princes of Retail. Each one of the heads is honoring an impactful retail icon to Chicago. That includes people like Montgomery Ward and Marshall Field, and the president and vice president of Sears. Trains. All right, now in between it all, the Riverwalk, the Merchandise Mart, and the trains passing overhead. I mean, it all is centered around this river. This is how we've been experiencing all this architecture, right? So I think it's about time that we talk about the dirty history of this river in more detail. Some of you are probably like, okay, here it is, buckle up. So basically, mid-1800s was pretty much the worst we ever saw the quality of this river. Back then, this was mainly just sewage water and industrial waste. Now, the problem with that is that the natural current of this river used to take all the polluted water and empty it directly into the lake, Lake Michigan. The problem with that is that Lake Michigan happens to be the source of Chicago's drinking water. Yeah, you can kind of put the puzzle pieces together and figure out why that's not so good. People get very sick, so you got to make some changes. Now, we tried a few things, including building these large intake tunnels underground to reach further out into the lake, thinking, well, if we just get it from further out, it'll be fine. But no matter what you do, eventually all that sewage is going to reach those intake tunnels, so we needed a more permanent solution. We actually decided to reverse the current of the Chicago River. Now, to do this, it was a 28-mile long canal that was dug to branch together the south branch of the Chicago River down to the formerly disconnected Des Plaines River. Right? So if you connect those bodies of water together and you dig deep down at a slope, eventually you hit a continental divide. So gravity just does all the heavy lifting for you, and will pretty much suck all the water from Lake Michigan, the Chicago River, and then have it all connecting to the Des Plaines, the Mississippi, and the Gulf of Mexico. So then that way, we can essentially flush all of Chicago's dirty sewage water down to St. Louis, Missouri for them to deal with instead. Yeah. Works out pretty well for us. St. Louis was very mad. There was a whole lawsuit involved. It was a complicated process to get it all sorted out. We released those dams officially in the year 1900, and by that point, it was too much work to re-reverse it. So still to this day, this river flows in reverse. It's part of the reason we have the Chicago Harbor lock system in place, which actually separates the river from the lake so we can control how much water is being let in. As you can see, this is no longer sewage water. We've done a lot of work with that. All right, it's now time for Aunt Kathy's bland and under-seasoned boiled chicken dish of our tour. 55 West Wacker. It's a bland and kind of basic-looking building. This is known as brutalism. So brutalism here comes from the French term béton brut, meaning raw concrete. So you can definitely see that here, raw exposed concrete, usually a focus on geometric shapes, oftentimes harsh right angles, and as the name suggests, although that's not how it gets its name, it is kind of brutal to look at. Because of that reason, a lot of brutalist buildings have been torn down. This is one of the few that remain in the city. But I think around the same time in the 1970s, around the same time as international style, due to the same reason, functionality and cheapness. All right, let's cleanse our palate here. Just in front of us, green building, gold on top, a little bit more pleasant to look at. That right there is the carbide and carbon building. It is beautiful. So this would also be classified as Art Deco. You're looking at a different material, in this case terracotta instead of that limestone, right? But still definitely heavily ornamented with plenty of those accents, metallic accents at the top in this case. Now, this is designed by the Burnham brothers, who were the sons of Daniel Burnham. It was completed in 1929, being heavily built out during the late 1920s. Actually, it's modeled after a champagne bottle. You can kind of see that with the design. And the reason was that, well, it was designed as protest to prohibition when alcohol was illegal in the U.S. The mindset was, what better way to protest prohibition and tell the government that we would like to drink than getting a giant champagne bottle and putting it in the middle of the city. Then we got our way years later. Now, the gold at the top there, that is real 24 karat gold, although it's not solid gold, all right? So don't be like Dan Goodwin, you know, Spider Dan climbing to the top, ripping yourself off a chunk. It's just very thin gold leaf, about 1/5000th of an inch thick. About halfway up, they do have a rooftop bar there as part of the Pendry Hotel. It's from the Chateau Carbide. It's pretty good, but I have to say you're a little bit lower than the other buildings, so you don't quite have a spectacular view. One that I would argue for, right next to Mather Tower, the tall skinny one, you have the Lennon House Hotel. At the top, there is the LH Rooftop Bar. It's pretty spectacular. If you've never been before, you don't even have to grab a drink. You can just go to their standing room, but if you would like to enjoy a nice cocktail, they do have a free standing room. You get an entire view of this downtown area, especially in the evening. It is quite beautiful. But hey, let's talk about Mather Tower, which is just next to it. This is a neo-Gothic building from 1928. Once again, you're looking at mainly a terracotta design. And then at the very top there, you can see it's a slightly different color. That's because up at the top is bright white aluminum as opposed to the cream color underneath. So it went through a full restoration process in the early 2000s because, as mentioned, terracotta, very fragile material. All right, jumping back to the left-hand side of the river. Coming up in front of us there, we can see Tribune Tower. It's the one with the big Chicago Tribune sign there at the bottom. So this right here is a beautiful design. Top section up there, heavily ornamented. What you're seeing off the side is known as flying buttresses. That is known as French Gothic Revival. So very similar to what we see with Spanish Revival. In this case, we are mimicking architecture from France. Specifically, the top section of this building is modeled after the ruined Cathedral of Normandy. The building here was actually designed as part of a contest that the Chicago Tribune newspaper held. They were seeking the most beautiful office building in the world. Out of over 200 submissions, this is the design that won by two New York City architects named Howells and Hood and officially completed in 1925. Sitting just beyond that, you can also see the Chicago Intercontinental Hotel. It's the one with the nice onion-shaped dome on top. That's just a nice Moorish accent piece. But we get questions about it, so. Now, also to the left-hand side of the river, you know, I do that whole metaphor with iPhones on my tour, so I gotta give a shout-out to where they're sold in downtown. To the left-hand side, 2017's The Apple Store on Michigan Avenue. Get your iPhones, get your iPads, get your MacBooks, get your Apple Watches. They got a lot of stuff nowadays. One fact I do like to include with this building, the roof of that Apple Store is specifically designed to resemble the top of a MacBook laptop. The short one. Pretty fun. surrounded by that load-bearing glass. Now here to the left, you can also see NBC Tower with the Peacock logo right up top. This is kind of like a miniature version of 30 Rockefeller Center. 30 Rockefeller Center is Art Deco. It's designed, was designed by Howells and Hood. It's in New York City. This does look very similar. So it was designed at a different time. For that reason, I don't call this Art Deco. I actually call this Eco Deco architecture. I think it works. Technically speaking, this was not completed until 1989, while Art Deco was mainly focused in the 1920s and early 30s. So, Eco Deco. That's not an official term. Now, you might know some very popular TV shows filmed inside of this building. That does include shows like The Steve Harvey Show and Judge Mathis, a variety of local NBC news stations, but then here's the big one. Every single season of The Jerry Springer Show filmed right inside NBC Tower. My last tour, everyone was like, Jerry's like, yeah. All right, back to the right-hand side. We can see the James Hardy building. Sitting just behind that one, you're going to start to see this wave-like pattern cascading down the side of Aqua Tower. I love Aqua Tower. Beautiful design. That wave-like pattern is inspired by the natural formation of limestone outcroppings along the lake. It's another good example of how you can really complement our waterways using your own architecture. So the architect behind this, her name is Jeannie Gang of Studio Gang Architecture Firm. I think she's incredible. And this is some of her incredible work from 2009. The wave-like pattern, well, they also serve as unique balconies for each one of the residents as well, offering each one a beautiful view of the city.
O sol, falei pra você que o sol cansa. Olha lá a estrutura que tem ali, ó. Parece que tem as coisas cobertas depois da roda gigante.
Oh yeah. If you are wondering where the Hancock Tower, it's that building.
Any last questions, Donoray?
Eu tenho uma questão. Acelera logo esse barco aí que eu tô com sede.
Switch over there.
E aí, você quer inventar alguma coisa?
Inventar alguma coisa.
São 3h30. Mais uma meia hora a gente chegar, vai dar umas 4 horas. Se você quiser fazer outro caminho, vai dar mais. Tem que passar na CVS para pegar o Tide. O que mais quer pegar?
Da maquiagem eu vou usar o daqui.
Ah, eu guardei pacaria com o negócio daqui. Nossa, eu vou pegar muita água. Outra limonada.
Vou pegar coca.
Coca?
Coca.
Hã? Você já tá abusadinha no inglês, hein? Coque.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't understand nothing.
I don't understand nothing. Muito bom. Você não entendeu? I
didn't.
É.
I didn't. Eu tô entendendo também, tá ali, ó. I didn't and I don't understand nothing.
Where's that? Oh, okay.
Você não fala I don't understand nothing. I don't understand anything.
Anything. I don't understand anything.
Vocês aí vão numa balsinha mais lotada ainda.
All right, my friends, we're making our way back to our dock at Michigan Avenue. At this time, if you just want to go ahead and find a seat for me, I have a little bit left for you on our way back here. Actually, the last thing we're going to talk about has to do with this neighborhood. This neighborhood is called Streeterville. It's actually named after one of Chicago's most eccentric and lively characters by the name George Wellington Streeter, where he just went by his nickname and was known as Captain Streeter around town. So, Captain Streeter had a history as a Mississippi boat captain. He was a circus organizer, but he finally settled around Chicago in 1886. Now, I use the phrase around Chicago very specifically because technically speaking, he did not see himself as part of the city. The lakefront back then started just about where the Apple Store is today. Following that was shallow waters. Over here was a variety of sandbars as well as rubble that had been pushed in over time from the Great Chicago Fire. And so he basically decides that he wants to call this his land. He pretends to crash his steamboat along those sandbars and goes to nearby property owners in the city. He asks them for permission to stay there while he repairs his boat, and once his boat is repaired, he refuses to leave. He's basically viewed as like this illegal squatter in Chicago, but technically speaking, they didn't really claim the land. It's not really theirs, I guess, and so it's kind of this gray area, so they don't really do anything about it. So that would be fine in and of itself, except he sees another opportunity, and he goes to different construction workers around town, and they have all this trash and rubble from their projects. He says, well, you can just push all of this into my land. I won't charge you anything. It's free. They say, well, that's a great deal for us. We can just clear it all away. And so by doing this technique over the years, he grows over 200 acres of fresh land. Now he has his own little area. So now he starts to sell plots of land for pennies on the dollar. He undercuts the prices of the rightful landowners. And best of all, if you live in Streeterville, you play by your own rules, separate laws from the city. And on top of that, you don't have to pay anything in property taxes. That's a pretty good deal. But now you're messing with Chicago's money. So now they really care, right? So, I mean, things escalate, we'll just put it that way. And as you can see, I mean, Chicago won, right? He's just one guy with his little posse. So he got officially evicted right around 1918, shortly passed away thereafter, about 1921. By that time, he's in his early 80s. But I will say this, they still left him with the name Streeterville. That's how it gets its name. So I guess there's something to learn from that whole story, too. And that would be, if you break the law in Chicago, you might have an entire neighborhood named after you. I don't know, that works. No, I think there's a better through line for the sake of our tour. I think we can really tap into that whole mindset of seizing your opportunity. I mean, Captain Streeter sure did, but we can also track that with some of this incredible development around the city. We have seen some records being broken with things like the Merchandise Mart or the old post office of Chicago. We have seen the tallest skyscraper in the world ever designed by a woman with the St. Regis, or the tallest skyscraper in the world for about 25 years with the Sears Tower. I think that really taps into the idea of each architect and each developer seizing their opportunity to make their impact here on our city. Now, my friends, at this time, we do need everyone to go ahead and find a seat as we're making our way back to the dock at this time. So if you are standing up, just go ahead and find a seat for me. Wherever is nearby is totally fine. We just need everyone to remain seated as we're getting settled into the dock. It's a safety, liability thing for us, so just hold on to those seats. Even once we reach the dock, the crew's got to get the ramp in place, so just continue sitting down. We're going to wait for the cue from the captain for when it's safe to disembark the vessel. Now, while you are sitting down, make sure to take a look around you. Grab any backpacks, hats, sunglasses, anything you brought onto the boat with you. Make sure to take off the boat with you as well. If you do have any garbage, don't throw it away now. Just make sure to grab it, and as you exit, there's a trash can here and at the very back next to the ramp. We really appreciate your help in keeping the boat nice and clean for the next tour coming on board. And then lastly, as for myself, as you guys are all leaving here today, I am going to be standing at the very top of the stairs just in case you have any last questions, comments, or concerns. If you think I did an extra great job here today and you have anything extra for me, I am allowed to accept it there at the top. Your contributions are not required by any means, but it is always sincerely appreciated. Now, with all that being said, I hope that you have feasted upon the Chicago Architectural Buffet. I hope that you have had a taste of what this city has to offer. So on behalf of everyone here at Shoreline Sightseeing, the crew, our bartender, the captain, and myself, I want to say thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the city of Chicago.
Vai dar uma gorjetinha pra ele, porque até você tem a cara de pode pedir. Gorjetinho, caralho.
Pagou uma fortuna.
Menina, meteu um dourado. Ó, tava tirando foto do carro, cara. É, que vem de folha.
Vem com comida. Caspa. Piolho. Incrível.
Mas isso em qualquer lugar, né?
Qualquer lugar.
Alex, you know, they have a gig. That's good. They don't know where. Want to wait option?
Nossa, também lotada a loja, hein? Sorveteria também lotada.
Vai esperar ou vai deixar?
Não, vai esperar. Ah, não vou. Agora o sol tá mais fraco.